$700 million. That's how much U.S. cotton farmers paid last year for insecticide treatments. Much of that was spent based on the recommendations of consultants and field scouts like yourselves. Hi, I'm Eric Wingate, and I'm here in Tifton, Georgia at the Coastal Plains Experiment Station. In the next few minutes, we're going to get into this field and show you how to get the most out of each scouting trip. But the first thing we got to worry about is getting you in and out of this field safely. Every field should be posted with a pesticide notification sign, but it's up to you to ask the grower about recent pesticide applications before walking into the field to scout. You should check field entry points for signs that may indicate recent pesticide applications and restricted entry intervals. It's important to closely observe all re-entry intervals for the full length of time. If you need to scout a field where the restricted entry period is still in effect, you could come back later or put on the appropriate protective gear as explained on the label of the pesticide applied. Pesticide poisoning has symptoms similar to many other illnesses and may include vomiting, nausea, headaches, dizziness, and diarrhea. If you suspect you or someone else has been exposed to pesticide poisoning, get help immediately. Once you determine it's okay to enter the field, you've got to remember to protect yourself from conditions like dehydration, heat exhaustion, and heat stroke. And rule number 1 is drink plenty of water or your favorite sports drink. A hat with a nice wide brim will help keep the sun off your face. And make sure you've got a good sunscreen and really glob it on, even on overcast days. Light-colored, loose-fitting clothing can also help protect you from the sun. Now, when you're in the field, there are a couple of potentially dangerous conditions you need to watch for. Rapid breathing, weakness or dizziness, heavy sweating, and pale, clammy skin can all be signs of heat exhaustion. If you notice any of these symptoms, whether in yourself or a partner, it's important that the person be moved to a cool area, given water every few minutes, and allowed to rest. Heat stroke, on the other hand, can be recognized by a red or flushed face, hot, dry skin, or in the worst cases, loss of consciousness. Now, heat stroke is a genuine medical emergency and calls for immediate action. Get the person out of direct sunlight and into a cooler area. If the person is conscious, give them small drinks of cool water every few minutes. Don't try to give any liquids to someone who's unconscious. And once you've got the person out of the sun, they need medical attention in a hurry. Remember, heat exhaustion can lead to heat stroke, and heat stroke can be fatal. Scouting smart means scouting safe. Squares and bolls, terminals and foliage. Different pests like different parts of the plant. So if you want to find them, you got to know where to look. The man to tell us is Dr. Philip Roberts, Extension Entomologist with the University of Georgia. Dr. Roberts, what do we need to know before we check this plant over?
One of the first things we need to know is just truly understand how the plant grows and develops. Know the important plant parts, be able to recognize them, be able to communicate with your growers if you're seeing insects feeding on a particular plant part.
Okay.
If we take a closer look at this plant, we commonly refer to the top part of the plant or the top foot of the plant as a terminal.
Right.
This is where a lot of the new growth occurs in the plant. This is where fruiting structures are initiated on the plant that ultimately produce the cotton we plan to harvest. This is also a very common place for us to find insects, some of our most damaging insects like bollworms and budworms. If we look closer at this plant, the actual growing point, or the very terminal of the plant, a lot of fruiting structures, new leaves, new growth is being initiated. This is a very common place to find pests such as bollworms and budworms. Now we talk about fruiting structures, that's what ultimately produces the cotton we plan to harvest. There's a flower bud surrounded by 3 leafy structures called bracts. Bracts is actually an area where you may see armyworms initiate feeding. The squares are a very important part of the plant that we really need to protect from insects. If we look farther down the plant, as you go down the plant, the fruiting structures are older, but after a square has attained about 3 weeks of age, that flower bud or square will bloom. Now, shown here is a white bloom. The first day that square blooms, it will be white in color. On the second day and third day, it'll be a reddish color. Now typically the petals from this flower will fall off and we'll have a seed pod left, which we term a bowl, which ultimately produces seed and lint, which our grower plans to harvest. Now there are times where the petals or the flower parts will not fall from the developing bowl. We refer to that as a stuck bloom tag. This is a common place during certain times of the year where we may find bollworm eggs, we may find bollworms feeding on the bowl underneath the bloom tag. So this is an important part of the plant also that we need to be aware of when we're looking for insects or scouting a field. And again, the lower part of the plant, that's where the fruiting structures are older. This is where we're going to find most of the bolls.
What else can we tell by looking at this plant?
Well, we can actually look at the plant's growth rate or look at the amount of damage on the plant to help us assess, the level of insects in the field. One of the ways that we can do that is use something called a square retention count. To make a square retention count, we're very simply just looking at these fruiting positions or small squares on the plant and assessing what percentage are damaged or what percentage is still retained on the plant and that they're healthy and green and still hopefully will produce a boll which we'll pick at the end of the season.
Okay.
Now to make these square retention counts, we may look at a single position on the plant. We may look at the top 3 to 5 nodes on the plant, a node being where a branch that has produced squares. It can be very difficult to make these counts unless you know what you're looking for. These very small squares in this terminal growing point is a common place to have insect damage from tarnished plant bugs, cotton flea hoppers, tobacco budworm, even bollworms. But doing the retention count, we're just looking for the presence or absence of these small squares. Now to do this count, you can gently pull the uppermost 2 leaves apart and it just exposes this fruiting structure or square. This one's healthy and green, firmly attached to the plant, so it's not damaged. Now if we look at the plant in the adjacent row, we actually have had some type of damage or we are actually missing some of these small squares on this plant. Now damaged squares will often, if they're still attached to the plant, may be yellow, may be brown, or even black. Once that square has been damaged, it's a process of a couple of days, but the plant will actually drop it or shed it. Now when that square drops from the plant, you can actually see a small elliptical scar where the square once was attached. Actually, one branch below here we can see another scar where a square had been attached. Now when we're making a retention count, it's important that we can recognize that there should have been a square at this spot. Right. And since it's missing, we're going to count that as a damaged position and make sure we record our proper retention count.